Thank you for coming along tonight, and thanks for the invitation to Elliott Scott for us to present. Thank you, Vincent. Just to introduce a couple of colleagues of mine, Mark, who's our in-house cameraman, happens to also be the Managing Director of our Singapore office, and Debbie over there. If you want a copy of the slides from us, then just ask any one of us or any questions later on. I was told that there's a group of very talented, intelligent, ambitious people here today, but instead I've got you, so that'll have to do. I'm just kidding. So I had to think about what would be a good topic to talk about, and in fact I came up with a very long list. If we're looking at the future of HR, what are some of the burning issues for HR over the next 10 years? What's keeping senior leadership awake at night in the HR and talent field? What are some of the trends in emerging leadership and talent leadership at the moment around Asia? But out of all of that, I decided to come back to something really fundamental, which is how do we develop ourselves and other people? What is the psychology of development? So I'm going to talk a little bit about accelerated development, and I'm hoping this will be applicable for you as an individual, but also if you're a leader, for the people who work for you, and as an HR practitioner, you'll also be able to advise people in your organisation about how to get a better result in terms of developing the talent in your organisation. So a quick introduction to myself. Future Leaders International is a leadership development organisation. We actually specialise in accelerated leadership programs. I won't be offended if you'd rather look at the screen than at me. It's quite okay. There's another screen at the back there. So we were established in Sydney in '97, so yes, I am Australian, and I appreciate the flags being put up for me on the wall. And the cricket that we just won, that was a great introduction as well. But I've been living here now for 6 years. We've been running emerging leader acceleration programs across Asia for about 10 years now, so Singapore is actually our head office. Some of the organisations we work for. So basically what we do is we focus on what leadership capabilities does an organisation need to achieve its business objectives, and where is the leadership population now, and how do we accelerate the process of bridging that gap. Now one way is to go and recruit new people, and I guess that's where Vinny fits in. The other way is to develop internal capability, and that's where we fit in. So it's a brief introduction to our business. So what I'd like to, and I hope you'll get out of today, is an understanding that if you would like to develop yourself and accelerate your career, what sort of process you need to go through. And as I said, it's something you can apply to yourself, but you can also apply it to people in your team or your organisation. So I was kind of looking at all those different stakeholder groups, but I'm sure you'll be most interested in how you develop yourself to be that HR director that you want to be. As I go, please do ask questions. If you can't understand my accent, that's quite okay. Just ask me to repeat it slowly. Or if there's a particular point that comes up, it can be quite informal. Okay. Now I've got a question to start off the session. You thought this was about HR? It's actually going to be about weight loss for a few moments. If you want to lose weight, what are 2 guaranteed ways to ensure that you will lose weight? Regular exercise, congratulations, that's one.
Reduce your caloric intake.
Okay. Eat less, exercise more. Did you all come up with the same answer? Eat less, exercise more. Guaranteed. Don't even have to change what you eat, just eat less of it. And you don't even have to go to the gym, you just need to do more exercise, and you will, if you want, lose weight. We all know that. What percentage of the world do you think knows that? Close to 100% of conscious people? Okay, so that's an understanding and maybe even an intention. And yet, the global weight loss business, in other words, all the businesses combined that offer you something other than eat less and exercise more, now totals, $670 billion. So what's the lesson out of that? Knowing something and doing it are completely mutually exclusive. And this is what I'm going to talk about in terms of development. So knowing how to develop yourself and actually doing it, or knowing what you should do versus making it a habit, are different things. So we can use the weight loss example to say there's quite a substantial percent of the world's population spend money on anything other than those two basic things. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. So one of the models that we talk about in terms of developing ourselves is the Stephen Drotter and Ram Charan Leadership Pipeline. Has anyone seen this before? Okay, there's an excellent book called The Leadership Pipeline. I highly recommend it to you. And you can think about this for yourself, where you're at in your career. The principle is that we all start our careers by being self-contributors. We start off, whether it's in HR or psychology or engineering or finance, whatever it is, you're an individual contributor. And then you can make a decision whether you want to turn the corner and start to lead other people. Now the principle of this model is you can continue being an individual contributor for the rest of your life, like a neurosurgeon or perhaps a concert pianist. Right? They never actually lead anyone, they just become better and better and better and more expert. That's completely okay if you want to do that. If, however, you want to start to lead other people, what you need to do is actually acquire a whole lot of new competence. So this model says that's called taking the turn. And it's a significant turn. So a good accountant is not necessarily a good accounting manager. A good salesperson is not necessarily the best sales manager. A good psychologist is not necessarily a great psychology manager, and so on. Same applies to HR, whatever your particular specialisation. And then once you're leading other people, a similar turn happens when you start leading leaders, and then when you become a functional head, and if you want to, a business head. Each one of these changes in your career mean you actually have to stop doing something and acquire a whole lot of competence. So the message for you about this model is career development is a constant process of surrendering and taking on. I have to stop doing the things I used to do to make head space and time and effort so I can do new things and acquire new skills to progress my career. So if you're stuck doing the same thing day in, day out, and you don't have any time to surrender anything, it's very hard for you to acquire new skills. So it's a great model for thinking about where am I in my career, what do I need to surrender so that I can create space to learn and acquire new skill. Now what I'd like to talk about is that process of how do we accelerate the acquisition of new skills. So I've got a little exercise here, if you can do this for me. Can I ask you please to put your hands together, just clasp them together. Yes, it's a highly interactive exercise. Now just have a look which thumb's on top. How does that feel for you? Normal? Normal? Okay. Comfortable? Usual? Okay, now what I'd like you to do is change the order of your fingers. So put the other thumb on top, move all the fingers around. How does that feel now? Interesting, okay. Uncomfortable? Not natural? Okay, hands apart for me, please. Okay, back together, go, quick! Hands together. Drinks down. Okay, did you go the first way or the second way? Who went the second way? You're special, very special. Most of us will go back to the first way, okay? Now this little exercise demonstrates habit. No one's probably taught you when you were 3 years old, this is how you put this thumb on top, you just learned to do something. And we have millions of these habits, like which shoe you put on first, which side you part your hair, how you look at somebody, when you're thinking, which way do your eyes look, what sort of language you use when you say hello to someone, so on and so forth. So this is what we call an unconscious habit. You don't even think about it. Now, to develop ourselves, what we actually have to do is go through the process of realising there is an alternative approach. And when you see and try that alternative approach, how does it feel? Difficult, uncomfortable, unusual? What's your arms and fingers kind of telling you to do? Just go back to the comfortable way, right? So if we actually want to develop a new skill as simple as this, we have to be aware that there is an alternative. We have to consciously try it, and then we have to go through the process of practicing. So can I get you to put your hands back the second way, the uncomfortable way, except for you special people up there. Okay. Now I'd like you just to keep going like this for a while. do that for me? Now, if you see somebody walking around Singapore like this, they've gone mad, or they've been on one of my workshops, or maybe both. Okay, so if we keep doing this, eventually both will feel equally comfortable. All right, you can stop doing that now unless you're really enjoying yourself, in which case, please carry on. So that little exercise demonstrates unconscious habits, awareness of alternatives, the discomfort associated with change, and then the need to do a significant amount of practice to break the habit. Now, have you heard the expression, you can't teach an old dog new tricks? Don't look at me when you don't. I learn occasional new tricks. So that expression is partly true, actually not true. What's true is old dogs have more entrenched habits. So my habits are a little bit more entrenched than maybe your habits. I can still learn something new. I just have to work harder and more consciously to break the old habit. So what we've got here is a little analogy for how you're going to change yourself. So let's move forward with personal development. So what does this look like in terms of either learning and development in the workplace, or maybe the process that you need to go through to progress yourself to the next level? So we start off with what we call unconscious incompetence. I don't know what I don't know. So you're not aware of many of the skills that you don't yet have to be at a higher level in your career. You might have sort of have some idea, but you actually don't know how to do the things that you don't know how to do yet. And then you get to a level of conscious incompetence. You're actually aware that there is an alternative approach. There is something else that you could do that you cannot yet do well. Conscious incompetence. It's a necessary part of the learning process. And then you can start to practice it, and we get what we call conscious competence. I can do this second way, I can do this new thing, but I have to really concentrate on it. I have to really think about it. And if we keep practicing, what eventually happens? We form a new habit. In other words, we become unconsciously competent. So let's talk about driving as an example. So this is just a little bit of theory, and we'll come back and relate to leadership. Driving a car. So before you knew how to drive a car, you're kind of aware that there was a steering wheel and various things, but you didn't actually know how it all came together. So you're in that sort of unconsciously incompetent. Then you get put behind the seat and taught that you've got to brake and accelerate and indicate and look in the mirrors and so forth. And you know, okay, I've got to do all those things, but I don't know how to do them yet. And then most people, but not everybody I see on the roads in Singapore, most people progress to the next stage, which is, I can do it, but I have to really concentrate on it. And then hopefully eventually you get to the point where you can drive from A to B and you don't even remember driving. Not because you were unconscious, but because it was all automatically competent. But we're all in trouble if somebody's driving along and go, oh, I need to brake. What do I need to do? What are the 3 steps for braking? Okay, by the time all that happens, accident. So we get to a point through lots of practice where it starts happening automatically, like playing the piano. So what does this mean from career development? What's the number one thing that most people will do or write down if they have a development action? So I want to learn how to be better at negotiating, or I want to be better at presentation skills. What do 99% of people write on their personal development plan? Training. Sorry? Training? Training, yes. Some sort of course. I'll go on a course. True? Right? Line managers, HR, most people say go on a course. What part of that process that we just described does a course address? Or a presentation like this? Mainly the process of saying you've gone from you don't know what you don't know to you know what you don't know. But you're still nowhere near competent. Right? All you know is that there is something else out there, and you might have a small opportunity to practice it. And this is why training courses, and the same applies to university degrees, they have a role, but they're actually a very small part of the process to become competent. In fact, you can become highly competent without doing any training, if you've got someone who takes you through this process. Most of us didn't necessarily go on a driving course. You had somebody sort of instructing you, yes, but it wasn't a course, it was practice with a coach sitting next to you. You were sweating, you were nervous. So, from a learning and development perspective, this is what we call the 70-20-10. Now just check, who's heard of 70-20-10 before? Some of you? Okay, so this is a really important concept. Again, for you, and as an HR practitioner, to understand how you can add value to your organisation. The 70-20-10 comes from research on how do human beings learn. If you take all of the knowledge and experience that you have, where did it come from? 10% comes from formal learning. 20% comes from feedback. And where's the other 70% come from? Practice. Right. So if you want to develop yourself, only 10% of what you want to develop can come from some sort of formal learning. 90% comes from elsewhere. So this is the great flaw in leadership development, career development, is we rely too heavily on formal training. I'm not saying it doesn't add value. It does add value. It adds 10% value. And you need the 10%. Because practicing something that you haven't learned how to do is impossible. So you need the 10%. But it's the other 90% that will accelerate your career. So what's the 20%? 10% is formal learning, and 20% relationships. Can you give me some examples in your world of what that 20% might look like? What does relationships mean for you in developing your career?
Having a mentor.
Yeah, a mentor. Yep. What else?
Working with your colleagues.
Just colleagues who give you feedback. Yep. So it could be other stakeholders, it could be managers that you're working with, it could be your staff if you have staff reporting to you, it could be your partner at home who says, you know, you need to tidy up the way you present yourself or whatever it is. It's anybody who can give you constructive feedback. Now I'd like you to imagine if you went to have a golf lesson, had one lesson, and then you went to practice, because you heard this crazy Australian guy tell you you've got to do lots of practice, and then as you practice, 15 years down the track, you went back to get some feedback. You would have developed a lot of bad habits, right? There would have been lots of things that you're probably doing wrong and right that you didn't know. So the feedback loop is a critical part of development. And then the other 70% is having a go. So let's relate this back to you again. 10%, by all means, go on a course, read a book, self-paced learning, attend a seminar, university degree, whatever it is. Then we need to be in a situation where we can practice that skill. Whether it's putting together a presentation, whether it's presenting to the board, whether it's doing up a learning program to launch in your organisation, whatever the HR field is that you want to focus on. You need to find mechanisms to get feedback on that. And then you need to understand you're going to make lots of mistakes. The more mistakes you make, as long as you're learning from them, the better. That's how you accelerate your development. So if you want to do things perfectly and not make any mistakes, you're going to keep doing things the way you've always done them, because that's the safe way. So if you've got a life and death situation, let's not try to learn on that. Let's go the safe way. But in terms of developing yourself, you do need to take some risks and practice and feel uncomfortable. But have a safety net, have those support networks around you who can give you feedback. Just before I go on, any questions about this? So it's quite theoretical at the moment. Now I'd like to see if we can relate it back to you with the 70-20-10, what it looks like. Is that a question? No? Just itchy? Okay, so what does 70-20-10 look like in real life? So 10%, which is formal training, courses, seminars, self-paced learning, university courses and so forth. 20%, any form of feedback, mentor, coach, your manager, performance review, colleagues, internal clients, external clients, vendors you work with, anyone who can give you feedback. And 70% is putting yourself out there on the projects. So I'll talk a little bit more about projects in a moment. So if you'd like to accelerate your career, use the 3A model. Identify projects where you're given accountability to deliver a result. So the onus sits on you. Find projects where you've got some autonomy, so you're able to make your own decisions. It doesn't mean that you can't consult and get advice, but at the end of the day, you're given the freedom to think for yourself and solve problems. And the ideal projects will have some form of adversity. So we want our learning experiences not to be too easy or too difficult, so there needs to be some adversity. So to accelerate your career, you want to be taking on projects that meet this requirement. You're given some autonomy, it's yours, you own it, you're responsible for the results, and there's going to be some challenges there. Something that makes it a little bit difficult, which is your opportunity to learn and grow. And as you master those challenges, you'll find you've developed some new skills. You may not even know what they are, but it's become comfortable. Then you need to take yourself into another zone to do something that's even more uncomfortable, and so on. And this comes back to our process of continual development and reinforcement. Now, as I go through all of this, one of the big challenges most people say to me is, Cameron, I don't have enough time to do all this development. I've got a really busy job. My boss just kind of says yes, but then just gives me more and delegates more. So how do I do this? Okay, that's a real life challenge. And if we don't overcome it, you'll get stuck. So the only solution I've got for that for you to think about is what I call incidental development. So I'll talk about incidental exercise for a moment. Next time you catch the MRT here in Singapore, watch how people line up to get on the escalator when there's a perfectly good set of empty stairs with no line that you could walk up. It's just an unconscious habit. I'm not being critical of escalators, but there's some really good stairs that could both give you some exercise and actually you can probably do it just as fast. And yes, I know it's hot and you might sweat a little bit, but you can get some exercise. Watch how many people decide to wheel their bag along the ground, but don't carry it. Okay? And yet, many of those people will sign up to a gym or wish that they had signed up for a gym. So you can build exercise into your day, if you wish, to burn calories, because it's one of those two ways to lose weight if you want to lose weight. So incidental exercise, incidental development. If you have a development mindset, you'll be constantly looking for opportunities to say, can I try something new here? What does that person know that I don't know? What are they doing that's different from what I would do? And if you start looking at the world through that lens, you'll find that you are learning all the time new approaches, trying new things, without having to put aside extra time to do a course or a project that's on top of my normal job. It's there right in front of you. We just have to have that lens on, just the same as if we want to exercise as we walk around to and from work each day and at lunchtime and so forth. Don't park in the closest park to the door, park further away and walk a bit more. Use the same sort of logic for your development, especially for the 70% practice. So how can I try to do this? Can I prepare my boss's presentation? Can I at least think about, if I was presenting this, what would I do differently? Not this presentation, because this presentation is great. Do it for another presentation. Okay, but have that mindset. What do I bring to the table? What could I do differently? So finally, I think I'm running out of time, Vinny? Okay. What I'd like to do is talk about a development plan. So whether you're talking about yourself, your staff, or as a skill set to provide to managers in your organisation, individual development plans are important too. So my first suggestion to you is less is more. A lot of people create a great big wish list, a laundry list of these are all the things I'd like to develop. I think that's applaudable, you know, it's a reasonable thing to think about, but it's not practical. You can't develop a large list of things. Each skill takes time to embed to do it well. So less is more means focus on one or two things that you want to do really well and put all of your effort and concentration on improving in those two areas. The other things can wait. And when you've embedded those skills, when you are unconsciously competent, then you've got the headspace to bring in something new. Now, again, I use a golfing analogy here, even though I don't play golf. But can you imagine going to a lesson and being told you've got to concentrate at the same time on your feet, your knees, your hips, your shoulders, your grip, your head, the club selection, and your balance of weight, as well as the arc of your swing. You cannot. Right? You can concentrate on one thing. If you concentrate on all those things, you won't do any of them well. What you need to do is narrow the focus down and get one part of the process right and embedded through practice, and then you can say, all right, now I'll take on the new skill. So the first thing we do wrong in developing ourselves is we spread ourselves too thin. This is an example of a core development plan. Develop my ability to engage and motivate other people or influence other people. I'm defining success. It looks like being more engaging, be more effective in influencing, try to listen more, be more enthusiastic and so forth. I see, in 20 years, I've seen so many development plans that look something like this. It's a New Year's resolution, it's a wish, it's a good intention, but it's not a development plan. What does a good development plan look like? Using the same format. Bad, good, bad, good, bad, good. What do you notice? A lot more detail, a lot more specific. So defining what success looks like is important. What is the outcome you want to achieve? We need some clarity. This is the conscious incompetence. You know what it is that you're not yet competent in, what it looks like. And then what's the 10, 20%? I'm going to watch TED, I'm going to go to HR to get a course. That's fine for the 10%. I'm going to appoint Frederick as my coach or mentor, as somebody suggested. A specific person who's good at this skill. I'm going to invite them to sit in on meetings and give me feedback. I'm going to sign up to be the person who prepares and delivers the meetings that someone else normally delivers, so that I can practice my skill. And I'm going to keep doing this until I'm getting feedback that I'm doing it really well and it feels really comfortable for me. Look, it's pretty simple when you know what to do. So you can think about this now. What would be the number one skill you're consciously incompetent, that you know you need or you'd like to develop and you're not yet competent? Then you identify, what does the 10, 20 and 70% look like? Where do I get the content, the know-how to develop that capability? That's the 10%. 20%, who can give me feedback on what I'm doing well and what I'm not doing well and how I can improve? And then 70% is, what's the on-the-job practice? Where do I find the opportunity to hone that skill? Otherwise I'll get stuck. I won't move forward. So most people get this conceptually. Doing it in practice can be a little bit harder. So again, if you'd like some help with that, either talk to Elliott, Scott, or ourselves maybe, and happy to give you some feedback about what might be that one or two key items we're going to be focusing on, and what does a good development plan look like. And you're in HR, there must be some other people, colleagues, resources, or even people here in the room who can act as a sounding board for you and say, all right, well, I can help develop that skill for you, you can help develop another skill for me. So folks, look, I'm out of time. I normally spend a lot longer on this, so forgive me for rushing through. But I guess there's just a couple of key messages I'd like to take away. First is, less is more. Focus on one or two critical skills at a time. Second is, have a thorough plan. Don't turn that New Year's resolution, I'd like to get fit, into a detailed 70-20-10 plan. I'd like to be able to present to the board confidently, good intention, now let's 70-20-10 it. Identify those opportunities day to day where you can practice the skill. Have a mindfulness towards, how do I practice the things I'm trying to apply and who can give me feedback on that. Remember the 3 A's. If you want to accelerate your career, look for projects that give you accountability, the authority to make decisions, some autonomy, and some adversity. Some form of challenge that you haven't had to face before. So the most successful leaders who've accelerated their career have taken on challenge after challenge and learned to really take themselves out of a comfort zone, and consequently they grow faster. And there's no substitute for practice, so that 70% of doing it over and over and over, to get yourself a coach or a mentor who can give you feedback on that. Now, do we have time for a few quick questions, if there are any?
Actually, I'd like to ask one question, Cameron. Obviously, you're a leader yourself. Just can you give a very quick synopsis of your background and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Vinny. That wasn't a scripted question. So yeah, I studied organisational psychology. I had an interest in problem solving and people, and I went into psychology, and of the different fields of psychology, neuropsychology, counselling, clinical and so on, organisational was the one that seemed to resonate most with me. So I went out of university and I went straight in as a trainee psychologist in a consulting firm in Brisbane in Australia. And I was just incredibly fortunate that there was a guy who did this all for me. So my boss took me under his wing and 70-20-10 me. I didn't know it was called that. I don't think he knew it was called that. What he did was he would highlight a particular capability and drive it into me, and then give me autonomy straight out of university to run projects. So, for example, at 27, I was given an office to run and set up in Sydney. And I can tell you I did it very poorly because I was well out of my depth, and I still do it poorly, Mark, right? But the thing was, it was adversity, it was autonomy, it was all of these things. So what helped me develop was somebody who used to just throw projects at me and at the same time provide me a lot of feedback and gave me a lot of confidence by inspiring me and seeing something in me that I didn't see myself. And in fact, it was that person that got me interested in the whole idea of uncovering potential, which is what this business now does. So I was really lucky. So I went through processes of being given projects to run at a young age, a business to run, setting up a new office, leading a team, all these things, well before I was really ready. And I had to learn on the job and accelerate, but I got lots of feedback and coaching. Does that answer your question?
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks. Any other questions? Get that guy off. Don't ask a question. All right, well, let's end it. Thanks very much for staying awake, and I hope you get something out of that, maybe some inspiration to be a bit more rigorous in developing yourself for your career.